welcome to JudgeCast. This is episode 14 in our series of YouTube videos focused on how to become a level 1 judge. My name is Bryan and I am joined this evening, afternoon, morning drive to work by the one and only Charles Feather.
Hello, hello.
And the one and only Marco Sanchez.
Hello, everybody. And as we know, we need to give a shout out to one additional person, which is our sponsor for this episode. This episode and entire series of L1 goodness is sponsored by Judge Foundry. Judge Foundry is a membership-based nonprofit organization serving the US and Canada in providing certifications for tabletop gaming officials. They manage everything to do with obtaining and maintaining your certification and provide educational resources like this one to ensure that every Judge Foundry certified judge has the knowledge and skills to be successful. When it comes to running Magic events at your local game store or at a larger international convention, Judge Foundry is a great resource for you to certify your skills. For more information on Judge Foundry, visit judgefoundry.org and click on the orange Become a Judge button to find out how you can earn your level. You can also join the Judge Foundry Discord to chat and interact with the Judge Foundry judging community in the US and Canada. The links for both are in the description below.
All right, in this episode, we're going to discuss replacement effects. Replacement effects are a fairly large and complex topic, and as such, there are rules for replacement effects that are split between the L1 and L2 exams. Since the focus of the series is on what a level 1 judge working F&M or scheduled events at a larger event should know, we won't cover all aspects, but if you wish to go deeper or explore topics outside the scope of what is needed for the level 1 exam, you can delve into our extensive library at JudgeCast.com or search for us in your podcast app of choice. Our podcasts are typically at least an hour, so you can both get more detailed discussion, humor, insight, and of course, our polyphonious dialogues.
All right, replacement effects can take many different forms, but they are typically, but not always, continuous effects. Replacement effects look for when a particular event would happen and replace some or all of it with a different event or outcome. The rules describe them as acting like shields around whatever they're affecting. So when identifying replacement effects, look for a few keywords. Effects that use the word instead, like Academy, Manufacturer, and Doubling Season. Effects that use the word skip, like Savor the Moment and Yawgmoth's Bargain. Effects that say this enters with, or as this enters, or this enters as, like Morphon the Boundless. And then finally, effects that say as this is turned phase up, like cards you've never seen before and will never play with.
Now, let's make an important distinction between triggers and replacement effects. So, as this enters, or this enters, is a replacement effect. When this enters is a trigger. So remember, here we're always looking for the very specific words that identify whether it's a replacement effect or a trigger. Triggers use when, whenever, or at, whereas replacement effects use all those beautiful words that Bryan was just talking about, including as this enters or this enters. So if you control a permanent with mana value 4 or greater, Ascendant Pack Leader will enter as a 3/2, whereas Emeria Captain will enter as a 1/1 and then get counters after its triggered ability resolves.
Replacement effects don't use the stack. They might be created by something that uses a stack, or they might modify something that uses a stack, but they themselves just exist. In our previous examples, players cannot respond to Ascendant Pack Leader getting the counter. And in order for a replacement effect to apply, it must exist before the event it is going to replace. It might seem silly, but if a replacement effect would replace damage with something else, it has to exist before that damage is dealt. If you are going to replace a card draw with drawing 2 cards, the effect has to be there. It has to exist before you draw your card.
Also, replacement effects don't repeatedly apply either. They get one opportunity to modify an event or any modified event that may replace that event. We can see an example of this pretty easily with Thought Reflection. Okay, Thought Reflection says if you would draw a card, draw 2 cards instead. Okay, so we are going to replace a card draw with 2 draws. We don't then replace each of those draws with 2 more draws, and then they tell 2 friends, and they tell two friends, and so on and so on.
The chain letters of magic rules.
Yes.
No.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, if an event is replaced, the original event never actually happens. The modified event occurs instead. For example, if you have 6 quest counters on an Archmage Ascension and attempt to draw a card, you never draw the card, you search instead. If you have an empty library, Archmage Ascension will keep you from losing. Another common example is regeneration, like on Lotleth Troll. When you regenerate a creature, it creates a replacement effect. The instead is actually hidden in the rules text for regenerate. But instead of destroying the creature, you remove all damage marked on it, tap it, and remove it from combat. It doesn't die, go to the graveyard and then come back. None of that. It never leaves the battlefield. It just goes, oh, I guess I'm done with that combat, and then takes a nap.
There are also some replacement effects that modify how permanents will enter the battlefield. These can come from the permanent itself or from other sources. For example, the Shocklands have a replacement effect that change how they enter, and Arlen, Voice of the Pack, modify how wolves and werewolves enter. Sometimes you run into special cases. Orb of Dreams says permanents enter tapped. That is a replacement effect that alters how permanents enter the battlefield. However, because it applies to a swath of cards that just happens to contain itself, the replacement effect does not apply to itself entering.
Now, we're going to call attention to the full rule and have Marcos put it up on the screen right now.
Done.
614.12 talks about replacement effects modifying how permanents enter the battlefield. It's got this section here in bold. To determine which replacement effects apply and how they apply, check the characteristics of the permanent as it would exist on the battlefield, taking into account replacement effects that have already modified how it enters the battlefield. Blah, 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 blah. All right. That last bit is probably the most complex and least understood rule in all of Magic. It is not on the L1 test. However, in its simplest form, this is the rule that lets Shocklands enter as untapped mountains when a blood moon is out. In this narrow case, we are able to look ahead to see what the characteristics of the land would be as it would exist on the battlefield. And since blood moon is out, the Shockland would be a mountain, and mountains don't have the as this enters replacement effect.
Damage prevention effects are not technically replacement effects, but they do behave like replacement effects in most ways. Only instead of replacing something with something else, they replace damage with nothing. Most of the rules around damage prevention are just a subset of rules around replacement effects with a couple of words changed. You can recognize them by their use of the word prevent.
Some prevention effects will prevent damage and do an additional effect. In those cases, the damage is prevented at the appropriate time, and then the additional effect happens immediately after, such as with our friend Chant of Vitu-Ghazi or Phyrexian Vindicator. Ah, he looks happy. Some effects state that damage can't be prevented. In those cases, the damage prevention effects are still applied. The part that prevents the damage just won't happen. And then we have Antivenom, Horrifying Healer. If damage dealt to Antivenom was prevented, you would still put counters on it.
Now, sometimes we have two or more replacement effects or prevention effects attempting to modify the same event. When this happens, the affected object's controller or the affected player chooses the first one to apply. This is different than we normally think at things. We generally let the owner or the controller pick the order. Here, we are using the affected player or the affected object's controller. So the affected player chooses the first effect to apply. This replacement effect changes the event. If the other replacement effects still apply, then we pick another one to apply. That can change the event, and we keep going until no more replacement effects or prevention effects can apply.
So let's try an example here. If I control a Fiery Emancipation and a Pyromancer's Swath, and I cast Lightning Bolt targeting Charles, we identify that Charles is the affected object or player. So then he gets to decide in what order to apply these effects. So he can apply Fiery Emancipation first, turning the 3 damage to 9, and then we can see that Pyromancer Swath would still apply, so applying that first replacement effect didn't stop this. So then you would up it to 11. Nice. Or, if he was feeling a little cheeky, he could apply the Swath first, making that Lightning Bolt deal 5 damage, and then have that 5 damage be tripled by Fiery Emancipation to go all the way up to 15. Dealer's choice.
The same process works if we throw in a damage prevention effect. If I control the protection of the Heckma, then things get a bit more complicated. I can apply protection at the beginning, middle, or end. Logic would say that I should apply it first, reducing the Lightning Bolt's damage to 2, then apply the triple effect, then apply the +2 from the Swath for a total of 8 damage. And the final complexity to our scenario is, what if Marcos is also attacking with the Mind Scanner? I can then choose to order the replacement effects, but first reducing the damage from 10 to 9, then apply the prevention effect, turning the damage into mill. Then Fiery Emancipation has no event to try to replace, and I only mill 9 cards. That seems okay? I don't know. I'll probably lose my impact tremors at some point in time. Terrible.
Yep. And for L1, that's mostly all you need to know about replacement effects. We do understand there are a few items that we didn't cover. For example, there actually is a order to certain replacement effects. And there's that spooky rule that we mentioned earlier that could probably be a whole hour podcast all on its own. So stay tuned for a future episode on that.
One day. All right, and before we wrap everything up, we would like to once again thank Judge Foundry for their support in sponsoring this series for helping you earn your Level 1 certification. Make sure to visit judgefoundry.org and click on that orange Become a Judge button to learn how you can join the magic judging community in the US and Canada and earn your certification with Judge Foundry.
Join us next time as we continue our series for earning your Level 1 certification and start talking about state-based actions. And if you want to reach out to us, we have our own Discord server for judges new and old, fans, and anyone who supports the judging community. The invite link to our Discord is in the description below, as well as our JudgeCast and individual social media links. If you're a fan of our content, make sure to like and subscribe to our channel and ring that bell to be notified when new videos in the series are posted, or when a new episode of our full podcast is released. Make sure to check out our channel's playlists for our complete L1 series, as well as the Learn to Judge playlist with episodes from JudgeCast's history focused on helping you become a better judge. And as always, you can find everything relating to JudgeCast at judgecast.com. With that, I'm Charles Featherer, and I keep it fair.
I'm Marcos Sanchez, and I keep it fun.
I'm Bryan, and I check my characteristics as I would exist on the battlefield.